this isn't really a video I want to make. I don't know if you can tell by looking at my channel, but I don't really like talking about stuff that I have negative opinions towards. I mean, that's kind of what my letterbox is for. But sometimes something comes along that is a continuation of something that means a lot to me, and seeing it be kind of butchered makes me a bit upset enough to make a video about it, especially when everyone else seems to be acting like it's the greatest thing to ever happen. This is the same thing that happened with Born Again, and now we're at it again with Peacemaker. So, I just want to clarify, I love James Gunn's work. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2, The Suicide Squad, and the first season of Peacemaker are four of my favorite comic book projects ever. They mean so much to me. I don't think I really need to tell you why I love James Gunn's stuff, because you guys probably do too. But I think it's clear that some of the cracks are starting to show, and the DCU might be off to a wacky start. Despite loving Peacemaker Season 1, I still wasn't that excited for Peacemaker Season 2. It just seemed like Gunn was doing so much, and his previous television show wasn't that good, and all the trailers for this didn't really hype me up as I didn't really like where the characters were going. And I guess I was just kind of trying to just prepare myself for the worst and just be pessimistic about it, because obviously it will be a bit better than my worst case scenario, right? Right? Yeah, let's get into this. This was really rocky and made me really worried for the DCU. Starting off with some general stuff, the music is incredible, as always, with the needle drops. The beginning retcon between the DCEU and the DCU, with the Justice League now being the Justice Gang, is kinda dumb and just kinda lazy, but things get even dumber, so who cares? I guess now is a good point to mention that another reason why I wasn't fully on board with Season 2 before its release is because I didn't fully know if just changing the universe would be the right decision, and luckily it didn't influence the story as much as I thought it would, but this first episode is kind of rocky just because they need to just be clarifying things when I feel like that shouldn't really be the priority. Regardless of the writing, all the actors just give it their all, with John Cena especially knocking it out of the park. Well, I guess I should clarify all the actors besides Frank Grillo. Frank Grillo is really, really bad. I don't like Frank Grillo, but also his acting capabilities are not there, and he's just so dry in every scene that he's in. But we'll get more onto him later. But yeah, all the actors are goats, and you can definitely tell that they have fun making this show. Within the first episode, all the characters get some interesting setups for arcs, with Chris wanting to be taken seriously as a hero, Hardcore not knowing what to do with her life since the only thing she was ever trained for now is trying to reject her, Adebayo trying to come to terms with what her new life could be. But John Economos, of all people, is the only one that really gets a complete arc of this, and a cohesive one. He was definitely my favorite character this season because he was the only one that was allowed to grow in a natural, non-rushed way. And they didn't just set things up for him only for him to just be attached to other characters the whole other time, like what happened with Hardcore and Adebayo. But are you telling me that James Gunn is prioritizing the male characters? That's crazy! Yeah, this always has been a problem with some of Gunn's work, and is especially the reason why I don't really think Guardians 3 is as good as the other two. But besides Creature Commandos, it never really hit this low as it was in Season 2. I mean, Season 1 is some of his best female writing to date with Adebayo's journey in those 8 episodes. But here, he just decides to give so much screen time to stupid stuff that we don't need, and the female characters are really hurt because of it. Speaking of the stuff that is just stretched to oblivion, is the Argus stuff. I think Tim Meadows and Sasha were good additions on paper, but they just take up too much screen time, and the way that they're portrayed is just very loosey-goosey. Like, I don't know if I'm supposed to be intimidated or laughing at these guys. They were just not compelling main antagonists. Made even worse with Rick Flag Sr. being the main antagonist. He never has a consistent personality, and even when he does, it's just the most generic things that Gunn could think of. Every time he's in another character's scene, he actively eats at what could be a good scene with his presence alone. Speaking of the amount of presences, why did Eagly steal so much of the screen time? I get it, he's cute. I pogged at the screen whenever he appeared because he's like, oh my goodness, he's like a cat but an eagle. but he did not need a whole subplot dedicated to himself when Adebayo and Adrian didn't get that either. Like, Adebayo just became the token black friend in this season. She has 2 conversations with her wife, but the reason they broke up isn't really that justified and only exists so she can just have an excuse to always be around Chris. Why isn't her subplot to do more with her relationship with her mother after she outed her? Why did her and her wife break up off screen after having such a strong, flaming dynamic in the first season? Danielle Brooks is an amazing actress and she really gives it her all, but the writing just doesn't care about her, and that's really sad and discouraging to see. Adrian, on the other hand, is just kind of dumbed down. Yes, I get that he was always the stupid comic relief, but he was never this stupid and acting like a kid. Like, he was one of the most skilled characters in the first season, and still had emotional layers that make me tear up whenever I think about this scene, for example. All of episode 4 revolves around him in season 1, and it was great at showing how broken he is, yet how much he truly does love and care about helping people. Here, he's just a silly guy. He doesn't get anything else. But I guess if we did have Adrian being gay for Chris, then that would ruin the amazing relationship that is Hardcore and Chris. Yeah, these two have no chemistry. And like I said earlier, in episode 1, Hardcore does get set up a good arc, but after that, everything she has to do is just about Chris. Nothing she does steps up her own character, and it's just so she can say that Chris means everything to her. I don't get the connection between these two, and I thought part of season 1 was Chris realizing that. Only now they're just the most important things to each other, and Hardcore takes Adebayo's place as female lead of the series. And Chris literally emotionally manipulates her at every stance. The series does not punish him for this at all. Like, episode 6 is what really nailed head on the coffin, that James Gunn does not realize how misogynistic his writing is here. Not only does Chris have sex under false pretenses with the Nazi version of her, who he doesn't know is a Nazi, but even then, it's still really weird that he purposely sexually manipulates her. And Hardcore doesn't seem to care about this at all, because, oh, he's just being goofy. The same excuse that Adebayo has for her white best friend trapping her in a Nazi dimension. Oh, he's just being silly. No, this series never punishes Chris for his actions. Whenever Chris tries to punish himself for these actions, obviously he's taking it to an extreme, but the characters that act like he's a saint that's always innocent, when that's just not the case. And it's not like James Gunn is unfamiliar to this type of writing either, when his best work, in my opinion, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, has Rocket being an asshole who pushes everyone away and puts them all in danger, yet despite that, he still gets punished for these actions, sure, but is still shown to be just as lovable as anyone else. And supposedly one of Gunn's favorite scenes that he's ever written is this scene in episode 6, where him and Hardcore are having this conversation about what it means to love. And even then, Chris is just literally saying that he'll only go back to their world if Hardcore says she loves him. He doesn't care about any of the other 11th Street kids. Even in the finale, he only decides to go back to them once he gets confirmation from Hardcore. This relationship did not need to exist, and it being the emotional core for the series, despite having no chemistry or reason, and being deeply misogynistic in nature, crumbles this entire series. Speaking of misogynistic things, Sasha is such a cool character in the comics, and all of her depth is just completely removed, so that way she can just be an angry woman who has sex with Rick Flag. Judo Master was really cool this season. He was funny, and he did have an interesting arc starting to build up that happened off screen in the last episode. Just great writing for your queer and female and LGBTQ characters, Gunn. Really great job, dude. Speaking of characters not saying anything, why did Rick Flag Jr. show up and then just leave? He's kind of the thing that set this plot into motion, yet when he shows up, it's not really used for any emotional reasons. It's literally just used so Hardcore doesn't have a reason to immediately be with Chris, as if Gunn thought that her hooking up with Rick Flag would be the only reason that she wouldn't want to date Chris. Speaking of the alternate version, yeah, it's cool to hate on Nazis. movies, and some of the jokes were funny, but why did you build this up so slowly over 6 episodes while stretching all this time with Argus only to barely use the concept of Earth X? We never get a real sense for this world, we never get a real sense for how it can play into these characters' feelings, and it's just kind of forgotten about. Yes, I get and I like the theme itself, especially how it plays into the finale, where the American government is trying to exile these people based on their genes. But these themes are only really given lip service to, and we never get to really explore them or this Earth. It only exists as a cheat, so that way Chris has an excuse to just leave, despite all the buildup and emotional conflict of him not wanting to. But the moment he learns this is a Nazi world, he just immediately tries to leave. Gunn has always been so good at integrating political themes into his movies and shows, but Gunn still wants to pretend like these are just coincidences because his CEO brain is starting to take over, and this season really shows that, and the way he talks about that also shows it. Also, why is Lex here? I mean, he's a cute cameo, but if he's not going to be the one to actively make these portals, why did he need to be the one that's visited in prison? Well, I guess it's just to set up Man of Tomorrow, another part of James Gunn's CEO brain taking over his writing brain. The only reason I care about any of these characters and got emotional during their scenes where they get emotional is because of leftover emotions I have from season 1. Them building Checkmate would be such a cool finale to this whole series, yet it's rushed through. These characters' arcs change every episode, and the only things that remain consistent are stretching out every single joke that Gunn could ever think of. Once again, this only exists to set things up, and that's so disappointing because I really thought that the DCU would be kind of different in that regard to the MCU. Hell, I would argue most of the MCU shows aren't this focused on setting things up where it actively takes away time from developing these characters. Which is weird because the Guardians films are like the one films in the MCU that are never concerned with setting things up. It's just really sad to think about what this season could have been. A deeply personal reflection of Chris as a character as he tries to come to terms with all the shit that happened to him in season 1, as all these characters drift apart before their familial connection brings them back together and makes them want to make the world a better place. I probably could say a lot more, and I get that a lot of my points are probably pretty vague, but if you've watched the season, you kind of know what I'm talking about here, and I just really don't want to think about this season anymore. Still excited for 2026 DCU. We'll see when we get there, especially since I still have a lot more DCU videos that I want to make. So yeah, 3 out of 10, I guess. Alright guys, hopefully you guys don't get too mad at me for this one. Bye bye.